Greetings and welcome back to the channel. Today, coming up to Halloween, I thought I'd tell you a very tragic and just unbelievable story of a father who was willing to kill his own son on Halloween by way, believe it or not, of Halloween candy. This is the story of Timothy O'Brien. We start off in 1974. It's a rainy Halloween night, and Ronald Clark O'Brien has taken his two children, 8-year-old Timothy and 5-year-old Elizabeth, in their suburban neighbourhood to go trick-or-treating. Joining them was their neighbour Jim Bates and his son. As they go around the neighbourhood trick-or-treating, they come to a house where the lights are all off. Not put off, the kids go to the door and they knock. Not wonder, is someone in? Are they perhaps hiding? A lot of houses, maybe when they run out of candy, do put the lights off. But unperturbed, they go and they knock at the door. After several attempts, no one answers, so disappointed, they move on. But Ronald, the father, actually stays behind. But later, Ronald actually catches back up with the group and he has some good news for the kids. The neighbour actually was in on that dark house and did answer the door and gave Ronald some pixie sticks. Now, these are tubes of sugared candy, like sour candy. And the kids obviously are delighted. They take the candy and put them with the rest and continue on their way. So they get home after their evening trick-or-treating, and Timothy is allowed one treat before bed, and he picks this pixie sticks tube of powdered candy. The powdered sugar was stuck in the little straw, so he needed to get his dad to give him a hand to unloosen it, and he had his first taste of the candy. It did taste a little bit bitter, he did complain, but his dad gave him a glass of Kool-Aid to wash it down. An hour later, little 8-year-old Timothy would be dead. Little Timothy was rushed to hospital, but they were unable to save him. He had died before he reached even the hospital. Harris County Prosecutor Mike Hinton was called in to actually look into this death and to find out what had happened. The first thing that he decided to do was to speak to the coroner and to ask a question: did the little boy's breath smell of anything in particular? Now, if you're a fan of true crime whatsoever, you will know exactly why he's asking this question. And indeed, it was confirmed that the little boy's breath smelt of almonds. Almonds is the giveaway sign of cyanide poisoning. So it was determined and later confirmed with pathology tests that indeed little Timothy had died of cyanide poisoning. Timothy had consumed enough cyanide to kill 2 people, and it was confirmed that the top of the pixie sticks tube had been filled with powdered cyanide. Obviously, these sweets weren't only given to Timothy. The police rushed to find the other children that had been given these same sweets, and thankfully none of them had been consumed as yet. One boy was actually found in bed clasping onto his pixie stick, and the only thing that had saved him is that whoever had put in the poison had actually sealed these back up with staples, and the little boy's fingers were not strong enough to actually undo those staples, and that is what saved his life. So the police start their investigation and they speak to Ronald, who obviously the children were able to say that he was the one that had got these. He'd got them from the house that was dark. Initially, Ronald was really uncooperative. He said he couldn't remember what house he got them from. Everything, they went to so many houses, he had no memory. Then obviously the children remembered where he had got these candies from. And he said, I didn't see who came to the door, just someone appeared and handed them to me, I didn't see their face. The police at this stage, rightfully so, begin to be a little bit suspicious. So they pressed Ronald a bit more and took him back out around the neighbourhood area that the trick-or-treating had happened. They were quite firm with him and it worked. It did jog his memory to the precise house that he had gone to. So they're able to go to the house in question and there is no one at home. But they are able to go to the actual place of work of the individual, which was Houston's William Bobby P. Airport. And they proceeded to arrest this gentleman in front of all his colleagues. So he's arrested, case closed, I suppose everyone thinks, but unfortunately not. As it goes, the gentleman actually had an alibi for that evening because he was at work the whole evening. His wife and child were at home, but they had, as was mentioned earlier, switched off the lights earlier that evening because they had actually run out of Halloween candy. They were at home, they had heard the door knocking, but they hadn't gone to the door because they didn't have any treats to give to the children. During this, Ronald is acting very suspicious. He's being angry at family members for not staying up to watch a broadcast of the funeral on television, and Detective Hinton is just not altogether convinced about Ronald whatsoever, and he looks a bit deeper into this gentleman. It was actually found out that Ronald had taken out life insurance in both his children, £10,000 per child, on January of that same year. And he had gone further. 1 month before Halloween, he had taken out a further £20,000 per child insurance money. Investigators already knew at this stage that Ronald had debts of approximately £100,000, and this was not looking good. It also did not help Ronald's case whatsoever that at 9 a.m. on the morning after his son Timothy's death, he was on the phone to the insurers inquiring about the payout and when he could expect to receive it. So the police were granted a warrant of the O'Brien house. When they went inside, they found scissors which had a plastic residue on, which was very similar to the residue found on the packaging of those sweets that had been laced with cyanide. So with this information, O'Brien was taken in. He was arrested for questioning. As he's being questioned, evidence just seems to keep stacking up. O'Brien had been attending a community college, and he had asked a professor in class, is cyanide the most powerful poison? Is there anything else that can poison and kill someone faster than cyanide? And the professor remembers thinking, what an extremely odd question, but O'Brien seemed to have a real fascination with poison and fast-acting poisons. Another witness was called from a chemical company in Houston, and O'Brien had actually went in and tried to purchase an amount of cyanide, but left when he was told that the smallest amount of cyanide that he could actually purchase from that company would be £5. The man from the store says he couldn't identify O'Brien, but he did remember vividly what he was wearing. It was a beige type smock that he would say a health professional, maybe a doctor, would wear. And O'Brien was actually an optician, and the uniform that this gentleman, the witness, described was exactly the same as O'Brien would wear to work. But unfortunately, this was many years before DNA tracing and contactless card payments. It was 1974, and the police unfortunately were unable to put these pixie sticks in Ronald's hands. They couldn't actually prove that he had bought them or where he had actually gotten them from. All they could say is that he had them and he'd given them to the children, but they couldn't prove that he was perhaps mistaken as to what door he got them from, so the police were in a bit of a quandary. At court, Ronald entered a no guilty plea, with his defence team basically saying that it was an unknown boogeyman of sorts that was just going around poisoning just random children, but friends, family and co-workers of Ronald actually all testified against him. And on June the 3rd, 1975, it took the jury just 46 minutes to return a guilty verdict. Those were 1 on the charge of capital murder and 4 on attempted murder. An hour later, it was decided that O'Brien would be executed by way of the electric chair. Ronald's appeals were exhausted for many years, and it wasn't actually until 1984 that he'd exhausted all avenues and his execution was actually able to proceed. So on March 31st, 1984, Ronald was put to death for his crime. By this stage, the US Supreme Court had decided that the electric chair was not a punishment that was any longer going to be used, so O'Brien was put to death by way of lethal injection. And outside the Texas State Penitentiary, 300 people actually gathered when O'Brien was actually being executed. They were shouting "trick or treat" and throwing candy at anti-death penalty protesters. And at 12:48 a.m, Ronald was pronounced deceased. So folks, that's the story of little Timothy O'Brien and the greed of his father, who actually murdered his own son to collect life insurance money to pay for his debts. The only thing we can be grateful for is that the other 4 children were not able to consume the candy. Poor little Timothy, his own father, someone that should have his protection and love for him above all else in life. Thankfully, there are no actual cases, although it is a bit of an urban legend about people putting razor blades and different things in children's candy. No child has actually ever died of this particular thing. This is a standalone case. There was an individual that put needles or pins in candy, but all that emerged from that was a teenager got pricked on the finger. There hasn't been children that have died from candy being laced with razor blades. That's very much an urban legend. So kids, when you're trick-or-treating this year, rest assured that cases like these are very much standalone. It is an urban legend. Enjoy your trick-or-treating. Over and out from Lisa Loves.